From the storm of sexual allegations recently brought by former WWE employee Janelle Grant to the high-profile anabolic steroid trial in the 1990s that threatened to obliterate WWE's very existence, McMahon's empire has faced countless moments on the brink. And who could forget the Montreal Screw Job, the infamous event that split audiences and tarnished the trust within the industry, or the tragic death of Owen Hart, a fatal accident that left the wrestling community reeling and cast a harsh spotlight on WWE's safety practices. But it doesn't end there. Vince's battles with worker rights controversies, which saw regulators and authorities step in to question why basic health coverage was denied to performers, only added fuel to the fire. In this video, we look deeper at Vince McMahon's tragic fate, a tale of power, ambition, and the heavy price of success: the sexual allegations. The storm cloud of sexual abuse allegations hanging over Vince McMahon has cast a long, ominous shadow over the once untouchable WWE franchise. The lawsuit, spearheaded by former WWE employee Janelle Grant, has unveiled a series of shocking claims that have rocked the wrestling world to its core. For decades, WWE fans have been captivated by the glitz, the glamour, and the larger-than-life personas in the ring. But now, many are questioning. Behind the theatrical stunts and million-dollar smiles, was WWE hiding a much darker side? According to the lawsuit, Grant claims that McMahon manipulated her into a sexual relationship, leveraging his power and influence to exert control over her life. The allegations go further, painting a harrowing picture of how McMahon allegedly shared explicit images and videos of Grant with other WWE employees, a violation that borders on betrayal at the highest level. Imagine the gut-wrenching realization of such a betrayal by someone as powerful as Vince McMahon, the very architect of modern wrestling entertainment. How does one separate the Mr. McMahon character from the man behind the mogul mask? Adding fuel to this scandal, the lawsuit also points to John Laurinaitis, WWE's former head of talent relations, accusing him of joining McMahon in misconduct. Grant alleges that McMahon forced her into sexual encounters not just with him, but with Laurinaitis and other WWE insiders, creating a picture of a toxic workplace steeped in abuse and control. The most alarming accusation? Sex trafficking. According to Grant, McMahon coerced her into non-consensual encounters with other men, allegedly seeing her as a possession to be traded and used. It's a claim that sends chills through even the most hardened wrestling fans. It's almost surreal, a storyline too disturbing even for WWE's risque drama. And yet, here it is, staring down McMahon and the entire WWE institution in a court of law. In the most haunting details of the lawsuit, Grant's lawyers produced text messages allegedly from McMahon that suggested an appalling assertion of ownership over her. One message reportedly reads, "I'm the only one who owns you and controls who I want to, expletive you." If true, these messages reveal a level of dominance that goes beyond manipulation and veers into what many are calling monstrous. How far does one go to maintain control, and what drives someone at the peak of success to such extremes? Questions like these are now echoed not only by the court but by the public, who watched WWE grow from a local wrestling show to a billion-dollar empire under McMahon's reign. The implications of this lawsuit are profound. It's not just Vince McMahon's name on the line, it's WWE's entire reputation. For years, the company branded itself as family-friendly entertainment, and yet this lawsuit lays bare an alleged culture that could be described as anything but family-friendly. McMahon's alleged misconduct has spurred an internal investigation within WWE, casting doubts on how such behavior could persist under the radar for so long. Was everyone looking the other way, too afraid to cross the man who built an empire? Or is the family-friendly facade itself part of the show? Curiously, McMahon has remained mostly silent, his public statements conspicuously evasive. Around the same time the lawsuit surfaced, a Mr. McMahon docuseries aired, which only added fuel to the fire. McMahon, in his only statement, criticized the series for supposedly conflating his on-screen persona with his real-life character, accusing the producers of spinning a salacious narrative using crafty editing. He urged fans to remember there are two sides to every story. It's ironic. Here is a man who once thrived on spinning drama for audiences, but now faces an unfolding reality no director could have scripted. Despite McMahon's attempts to redirect the narrative, the fallout has been swift and significant. WWE fans, once united in their adoration of the franchise, now find themselves divided. Some struggle to reconcile the allegations with the icon they grew up idolizing, while others are calling for accountability and transparency. It's a scandal that has reached beyond WWE's hardcore fan base, unsettling sponsors and business partners alike. WWE's wholesome mainstream appeal is now at risk, as companies begin to reconsider their associations with an entertainment brand under such a troubling shadow. The alleged internal unrest is further hinted at by the sudden and unexpected absence of one of WWE's biggest stars, Brock Lesnar, who has not been seen in the ring since the lawsuit broke. Fans have speculated endlessly, is this just coincidence, or is Lesnar's disappearance linked to internal conflict over McMahon's legal woes? The absence of such a key figure has only added to the turbulence within WWE, leaving fans and insiders wondering if this lawsuit is the beginning of an irreversible fracture in the organization. If Grant's allegations hold up in court, the consequences for McMahon and WWE could be nothing short of seismic. WWE's appeal has always been built on larger-than-life stories, carefully choreographed for maximum impact. Now they face a real-life drama that threatens to tear down not just McMahon's legacy, but potentially the entire empire. Would fans ever return if this lawsuit permanently taints the franchise? And more importantly, will WWE's leaders finally confront the darkness beneath the glitz? As for Vince McMahon, the man once seen as untouchable, he now faces an uncertain future. This lawsuit may very well be the defining chapter in his career. Not the championships, not the billion-dollar deals, but this scandal. Even if he denies the allegations, his reputation has taken a critical hit. It's difficult to imagine a comeback from accusations that are this severe. What will remain of his legacy if WWE survives but his name is forever associated with scandal? Will Vince McMahon be the ultimate villain of his own story, or will he somehow emerge unscathed from a trial that could redefine his legacy and WWE's future? As the curtain lifts on this tragic saga, all eyes remain fixed on a court battle as intense as any WrestleMania showdown. But first, let's take a walk down memory lane and show you a pattern of how Vince McMahon is no stranger to the courts. In fact, this next case almost brought WWE to its knees. However narrowly, Vince somehow managed to stay afloat. The anabolic steroid case. The anabolic steroid case that engulfed Vince McMahon and WWE in the early 1990s was a saga of ambition, betrayal, and courtroom drama that threatened to unravel one of America's biggest entertainment empires. To understand how WE and its mastermind, Vince McMahon, found themselves on trial, we need to roll back to the mid-1980s, a golden era for wrestling when McMahon was busy reinventing the sport and himself. Back then, professional wrestling was undergoing a seismic transformation. McMahon, with his bold, often controversial vision, was leading WWE from its niche regional roots to the global powerhouse we know today. Central to this transformation was McMahon's push for larger-than-life characters, heroes who were more than just athletic competitors. No, these men were titans, wrestling demigods with physiques that defied belief. This was the age of Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, and the Ultimate Warrior, names that needed no introduction. But was it all muscle and sweat? Behind the glitz and glamour, an uncomfortable reality simmered. The sculpted physiques that captivated audiences were often not just the result of hard work, training, and protein shakes. The truth was darker. Anabolic steroids and human growth hormones were rampant, fueling the transformation of wrestlers into these invincible, chiseled icons. Enter Dr. George Zahorian, a Pennsylvania-based urologist who became infamous for his role in the scandal. Originally appointed as a ringside physician for WWE events, Zahorian's role quickly expanded, so much so that his office eventually resembled a veritable pharmacy. Dr. Zahorian supplied everything a wrestler would need to look like a god. Steroids, painkillers, you name it. For nearly 5 years, from 1984 to 1989, he counted some of WWE's biggest names among his clientele, including Hulk Hogan, Rowdy Roddy Piper, and yes, even Vince McMahon himself. The drugs flowed freely, shipped to various locations, including WWE headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut. Yet like all good things, the ease of steroid use was about to come to an end. In 1988, U.S. laws around steroids tightened, making it a criminal offense to traffic them. This shift sparked a federal investigation into Zahorian's activities and ultimately set WWE up for a showdown in court. The tide was turning, and McMahon and WWE would soon find themselves in the center of a storm. Zahorian, however, couldn't stop himself. In his quest to grow his side business, he began selling drugs to amateur bodybuilders and athletes, a move that attracted unwanted attention from the federal government. His empire came crashing down when he sold drugs to William Dunn, a former powerlifter who turned into a confidential informant. This betrayal caught Zahorian by surprise, and it didn't take long before federal agents were raiding his office, catching him in a desperate, almost cinematic scene as he shredded incriminating documents. After his indictment in 1991, Zahorian faced a long list of charges, including multiple counts of drug trafficking. With his career and freedom on the line, Zahorian decided to cooperate with the feds. He turned informant, agreeing to expose Vince McMahon and WWE as part of a steroid distribution network that he claimed went all the way to the top. McMahon was stunned, but he was no stranger to controversy. He knew that this time, the stakes were high. The trial, which began in 1992, 1993 was a media spectacle, a wrestling event of its own kind. Every detail was blown up for the public to see, and both fans and critics of WWE watched as Vince McMahon faced the very real possibility of prison. The prosecution, armed with Zahorian's testimony and other accounts, argued that McMahon had encouraged the use of steroids, pushing wrestlers to bulk up beyond natural limits to feed audiences' hunger for muscle-bound heroes. The drama reached its peak with the much-anticipated testimony of Hulk Hogan. The wrestling world held its breath as Hogan, WWE's golden boy, and McMahon's longtime friend, took the stand. Hogan admitted to steroid use, claiming it was solely for recovery purposes. Did he do it out of loyalty, or was he protecting his own image? Either way, he avoided directly implicating McMahon. Hogan's appearance was billed as a turning point, but in the end, his testimony was anticlimactic, a letdown for the prosecution, who had counted on Hogan to seal the case against McMahon. The prosecution's case began to unravel. Another key witness, Kevin Nails Wacholtz, alleged that McMahon had personally pressured him to use steroids. Wacholtz painted a picture of a ruthless Vince McMahon who would do anything for ratings. But without evidence to support his claims, Wacholtz's testimony was easily dismantled by the defense, which portrayed him as a disgruntled ex-employee with a vendetta. It didn't help that Wacholtz had openly admitted to disliking McMahon, making his accusations look less like truth and more like sour grapes. With Jerry McDevitt, McMahon's skillful attorney, at the helm, the defense exposed procedural errors and inconsistencies in the prosecution's case. McDevitt painted a picture of a vendetta-fueled crusade against McMahon. Who were these prosecutors to try and pull down the wrestling empire that had brought joy and spectacle to millions? McDevitt argued that the government was wasting taxpayer dollars on a frivolous case while failing to make its allegations stick. Ultimately, the jury acquitted Vince McMahon on all charges, and he walked out of that courtroom a free man. For McMahon, it was a personal and professional victory, a vindication of his life's work. However, the toll the trial took on WWE was undeniable. Public distrust grew, and the entire industry faced increased scrutiny, with fans and critics alike questioning the lengths to which WWE had gone in its quest for larger-than-life heroes. Financially, the scandal hurt as advertisers hesitated, worried about their association with a brand now tainted by controversy. In the years that followed, WWE had to clean up its image, introducing wellness programs and policies aimed at promoting wrestler health. The steroid scandal was a turning point, marking the end of an era. But did it ultimately hurt McMahon's legacy? Perhaps not as much as one would think. Despite the scandal's damage, the WWE brand continued to thrive, resilient as ever. However, a few years later, Vince McMahon and WWE found themselves yet again in another scandal. You could almost assume that it was a tall order for Vince and WWE to stay out of trouble. This case served as a reminder of the high price of fame and the fine line between entertainment and exploitation. The Montreal Screw Job and Owen Hart's death. The Montreal Screw Job stands as one of the most infamous and polarizing events in professional wrestling history, a real-life drama that shattered the illusion of wrestling as mere entertainment and exposed a ruthless business underbelly. The date was November 9th, 1997, and the setting, the Survivor Series pay-per-view at the packed Molson Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. The players in this explosive drama: Bret the Hitman Hart, WWF champion and Canadian hero, and Shawn Michaels, his arch-rival both on and off the screen. The story wasn't just about a title. It was about loyalty, betrayal, and a masterstroke of corporate survival that left the wrestling world reeling. To understand the stakes, let's rewind a bit. Bret Hart, one of the WWF's brightest stars, had been lured by a tempting deal from rival promotion WCW. After years of loyalty to Vince McMahon and the WWF, Hart was about to leave the company that made him a star. But there was a catch, a massive catch. He was still the WWF champion, and his last match was set to be in Canada, where he was revered as a national hero. McMahon faced a monumental risk. If Hart left with the championship, he could appear on WCW television with the title, a move that would shatter the WWF's credibility. Wrestling fans were fiercely loyal, but a title defection to WCW could destroy WWF's standing. Negotiations over how to end Hart's WWF run were heated. The proud Canadian was adamant about not losing the title in his home country, feeling it would tarnish his legacy. McMahon, knowing his business was on the line, wanted Hart to lose to Michaels that night in Montreal, but Hart wouldn't have it. He offered to relinquish the title later, perhaps in the US. McMahon nodded along, but deep down, he was already crafting a backup plan, something Hart couldn't see coming, a scheme that would go down in wrestling infamy. When the night of the Survivor Series arrived, the atmosphere was electric, fans eagerly awaiting a showdown between two icons. However, unbeknownst to the crowd, McMahon, Michaels, and WWF officials had orchestrated what would later be called the Montreal Screw Job. In the agreed finish, Michaels was supposed to apply Hart's signature move, the sharpshooter, sharpshooter, only for Hart to escape and continue the match. But McMahon had other ideas. The moment Michaels locked in the sharpshooter, referee Earl Hebner, under direct orders from McMahon, called for the bell. Hart hadn't tapped out, yet Michaels was declared the new WWF champion. Confusion erupted in the ring, but soon it dawned on everyone, including Hart himself. He had been betrayed in front of the world. The aftermath was nothing short of chaos. Hart, fuming with disbelief and anger, spat directly in McMahon's face before trashing ringside equipment, venting the fury of a man who had just been humiliated on live television. Backstage, things were no calmer. When McMahon came face to face with an incensed Hart, the situation escalated into a physical altercation, with Hart reportedly landing a punch that sent McMahon to the floor, a punch many fans later cheered for, even though they hadn't seen it. For a man who had been their hero, this was a stand against the corporate machine that seemed willing to sacrifice anything or anyone in its path. But the screw job didn't end there. The fallout created lots of surprises, forever altering how fans saw McMahon and marking the birth of a new WWF character, Mr. McMahon. As this villainous on-screen boss, McMahon would play the role of an unfeeling, money-hungry tyrant, and the fans ate it up. The lines between reality and wrestling fiction had been blurred, and fans were gripped by the story of a boss who'd stop at nothing to keep his empire intact. Yet as McMahon's new persona took hold, the memory of that betrayal still haunted fans. The outrage only intensified when, in 1999, tragedy struck again. During the Over the Edge pay-per-view event, Hart's younger brother Owen fell to his death in a freak accident while performing a stunt. Rather than canceling the show, McMahon decided to continue, a decision that was met with horror by many fans. How could he go on with a show mere minutes after a fatal accident? This wasn't just about business anymore. It was a matter of basic human compassion, or at least so many fans believed. For fans, the Owen Hart tragedy became the ultimate betrayal. First, they'd seen their beloved hero Bret be cheated out of his title, and now the WWF couldn't even pause for a moment of respect after his brother's tragic death. Was this a sign of a businessman with zero empathy, or was it simply the mark of a man singularly dedicated to his empire? Fans couldn't help but ask, how far was too far? And where was the humanity in this machine of spectacle and profits? Ironically, the Montreal Screw Job and Owen Hart's tragic accident both fueled the rise of the WWF, as fans were increasingly drawn to the unfolding real-life drama and the lines it blurred. McMahon's cold-hearted decisions not only kept the WWF in the headlines, but solidified him as the wrestling industry's ultimate villain. In the world of wrestling, where narrative and reality often mix, he was now an iconic anti-hero who could embrace the fury of fans while continuing to cash in on it. For Bret Hart, however, the screw job was the end of a storied WWF career and the beginning of a frustrating run in WCW that never quite measured up. Fans sympathized with Hart and mourned the end of an era. The screw job exposed the raw, unforgiving nature of professional wrestling, a world where the drive for dominance often overshadowed loyalty or even decency. Yet, for all the bitterness, it left fans with something unforgettable, a reminder of why they loved and hated the industry all at once. Even decades later, the Montreal Screw Job remains a pivotal moment in wrestling lore, serving as both a cautionary tale and a defining legacy of the McMahon-Hart rivalry. It's a story where the hero was betrayed, the villain triumphed, and the fans were left wondering just how much of it was real. In the end, isn't that what keeps them coming back? The feeling that behind every scripted storyline, there might just be another Montreal Screw Job waiting to unfold. For instance, the 2019 WWE's Darkest Reveal. But what was it all about? Let's find out. WWE's workers' rights controversy. In WWE's world of high-flying stunts and intense storytelling, a real-life saga unfolds in the classification of its wrestlers as independent contractors. This seemingly minor label isn't just a technicality, it has real consequences, particularly for those putting their bodies on the line night after night. WWE's choice to designate wrestlers as independent contractors means these performers miss out on benefits like health insurance, retirement plans, and job security. For the wrestlers who dedicate their lives to this punishing craft, it often translates to physical and financial vulnerability, sparking significant controversy in recent years. But what drives WWE to cling to this classification? And why is this particular setup so fiercely defended by Vince McMahon and his empire? Historically, wrestling was indeed a gig-to-gig business, with wrestlers moving between various promotions, each largely disconnected from the others. WWE's wrestlers, however, are a far cry from these itinerant freelancers of old. WWE holds its wrestlers in tightly regulated contracts that dictate where and when they perform, with little room for outside ventures. Wrestlers have limited autonomy over their careers, often prevented from taking on other projects, even when they don't conflict with WWE commitments. In essence, WWE's performers are bound in a way that contradicts the independent contractor designation. Under this label, wrestlers are seen as separate from the company, yet their lives are intertwined with its demands in a way that increasingly resembles traditional employment. For instance, consider the case of Ryback Reeves, who was reportedly blocked from gracing the cover of a fitness magazine, or Chavo Guerrero Jr., whose chance to appear on Monk, a popular television show, was also denied. If wrestlers are independent in WWE's eyes, why such control over their offstage careers? Why such restrictions if they're truly free agents? The contradiction here is glaring, leaving many wrestlers to question why they are treated as employees in practice, but not afforded the benefits of that title. The schedule for WWE wrestlers is brutal, with hundreds of shows every year and minimal time for recovery. Injuries are a given, not a possibility. Broken bones, torn muscles, concussions, these aren't exceptions, but the rule for those in the squared circle. Yet under WWE's classification, performers are left to handle their own health insurance, medical expenses, and rehabilitation. Imagine landing badly after an acrobatic flip, only to be told you'll need to handle the surgery and recovery costs yourself, all while recovering in time for the next show. The lack of coverage doesn't just jeopardize wrestlers' finances, it risks their long-term health and well-being. WWE's reliance on the independent contractor status recently became even more controversial when California passed Assembly Bill 5, AB 5, also known as the ABC test. This law aims to ensure that companies cannot exploit workers by misclassifying them as independent contractors. According to this test, a worker can only be classified as an independent contractor if they are free from company control, perform work outside the usual course of the company's business, and have an independent trade or business in that industry. WWE's contracts fail nearly every part of this test, especially the requirement for autonomy. WWE's wrestlers work exclusively for the company, perform work central to WWE's brand, and lack independent businesses in wrestling. How then could WWE maintain that these athletes are anything but employees? One of WWE's go-to moves for evading the implications of the ABC test is a forum selection clause, a contractual stipulation that requires all legal disputes to be resolved in Connecticut, WWE's headquarters. This means that any wrestler hoping to challenge WWE's classification will face a legal battle on the company's home turf, where rulings have historically favored WWE. In 2009, a court case brought forward by former wrestlers contesting the status was dismissed, with the Connecticut court citing WWE's own contractual terms as justification. In WWE's own home court, challenging their classification was, and continues to be, an uphill battle. WWE's staunch defense of this classification has not gone unnoticed, however. Fans and industry insiders alike have voiced their outrage. Many argue that WWE's refusal to provide standard employee benefits is exploitative, particularly given the high physical toll wrestling takes on performers. In the past, suggestions for unionizing WWE wrestlers were treated as taboo. WWE legend Jesse Ventura attempted to form a union in the 1980s, yet his efforts were quickly squashed by WWE's powers that be. If wrestlers had their union today, would their health and safety be at less risk? The question lingers in the air as a missed opportunity for collective action that could have fundamentally changed wrestling history. Amid this growing backlash, WWE finds itself at a crossroads. One option is to reclassify its performers as employees, which would bring the company in line with modern labor standards and potentially stave off future legal troubles. But that decision comes with a hefty price tag, as WWE would need to shoulder additional expenses for health coverage, retirement benefits, and paid time off. Would Vince McMahon, ever the businessman, take such a costly step to secure workers' rights, or will he hold his ground in a show of corporate defiance? For a company rooted in carefully crafted storylines and dramatic finishes, this real-life decision presents its own drama, and it remains uncertain which way WWE will lean. The ongoing workers' rights debate surrounding WWE is emblematic of a larger tension between the entertainment industry and labor standards. Wrestlers put on a grand spectacle, but the consequences of how they're treated outside the ring are far from a show. This issue of classification is a mirror to broader questions about responsibility and equity in businesses that demand the utmost of their workers. Should the show's thrill and pageantry justify WWE's actions, or should the wrestlers' rights and dignity outweigh the allure of profits? If you enjoyed watching this video, check out our other awesome videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.